Hello and welcome back to my channel. As always, I am Matt from Cleveland Sex Therapy. I'm a licensed clinical therapist and certified sex therapist. As we head towards what is arguably my favorite holiday, Halloween, I thought I would make a video on a topic that continues to interest me to this day: the connection between sex and horror movies. So why do some of us get so turned on when watching scary movies? And what are my recommendations on movies that I think could help with that process and some to stay away from? Let's dive on in to find out. All right, so when was the last time you watched a scary movie? For me, it was about an hour ago. I watched Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, and I gotta say I love this movie so much. It is such an underrated gem. You should definitely check it out. I tend to watch about one horror movie a week, and I do this because it helps me stay connected to this genre that I love so much. But enough about me. How was that experience for you the last time you watched a horror movie? Were you scared? How did it feel? My guess is that you were probably experiencing some of the following: shortness of breath or an increase in breathing, rapid heart rate, a heightened sense of your surroundings, or an increase in blood pressure, to name a few. This is all due to chemicals like cortisol, adrenaline, serotonin, dopamine being released in your system. Now let's look at what happens during sexual arousal. Increased heart rate, rapid breathing, a release of serotonin and dopamine, an increase in blood pressure. Does this sound familiar? Basically, being scared releases the same kind of chemicals and produces the same physiological reactions as when you are becoming sexually aroused. And I'm not the first person to make this connection. They've been conducting research on this for decades. This includes an interesting experiment that took place in 1974, which resulted in men being more attracted to a beautiful woman after they crossed a shaky suspension bridge compared to those men who didn't cross the bridge. One contributing researcher said, "Being scared is physiologically arousing, and when around the right person, may cross over into sexual arousal." This is all starting to make sense. So picture this. Let's say I'm watching a scary movie. What can happen if I'm watching it with somebody I care for or feel this sexual attraction to? Well, quite simple. The feelings of arousal can become intertwined with feeling scared. So when I'm watching a scary movie, I'm releasing cortisol and adrenaline. If I'm with somebody that I care about, I can also release oxytocin, which is this calming relaxation chemical. Oxytocin is known as the cuddling hormone, and it can lead us to wanting to be intertwined with our partners. And as they say, the rest is history. At this point, you may be asking, but Matt, does this apply to all kinds of horror? The answer is quite simple. I have no idea, because it's unclear. Slasher movies tend to create this release due to the anticipation, violence, and gore that can be witnessed. Studies show that it's completely normal to be aroused by these kind of things, as long as we keep them in the realm of fantasy. So during these movies, when you add in an intimate scene or a sex scene, we can relate to this experience as well. Because sex in and of itself is a vulnerable activity conducted by two or more people. When we see others having sex, we can relate to that experience of vulnerability. So there's an equation out there that may help with this. Vulnerability plus horror movie equals increased arousal. I spent some time over on my Instagram account at Cleveland Sex Therapy, creating posts that I like to call scary intimacy. With these posts, I look at the connection between arousal and being scared and give my subjective opinion on whether or not I think this movie would be one that elicits that response. So I wanted to talk about 5 movies and give you my opinion on whether or not I think they have the potential of eliciting that arousal. The first film I want to talk about is X. This movie came out this year, and not only is it a phenomenal film, but I think it has that potential of eliciting that arousal response within you, because the plot is centered around these individuals making a pornographic film, and the acting is so well done. So when we combine that vulnerability of a slasher film and seeing people have sex and relating to it, that creates the perfect recipe for arousal. Next up, Slumber Party Massacre, the remake. This movie came out in 2021. I have to say I was hesitant to watch this movie based on the fact that some remakes lately just have not been great. But the combination of scary movie tropes, a sexy pillow fight scene, and this very, very sensual shower scene that I cannot stop thinking about leads me to thinking that this would be a great movie to help elicit that arousal within you. Next, I want to talk about what I consider to be a great film, but one that may not elicit that response, and that is Midsommar. Why I think this is because the concept and the idea of a psychological thriller or an atmospheric horror movie tends to be more centered around a great plot and less about jump scares. This also works for the movie It Follows, that although is centered around sex, draws you more into the narrative of the movie. Both these movies are elevated and smart, but they can feel like a slow burn, and that tends to not be conducive when we are talking about arousal. Next up, Final Destination. Really, any of the Final Destination movies are phenomenal films, especially when it comes to that arousal equation. Remember, vulnerability plus scary movie equals increased arousal. With a movie centered on anticipation and uncertainty, this can definitely make us feel vulnerable. I suggest watching this with somebody that you care about. And lastly, a recommendation that most definitely will work: Thanksgiving. I'm joking. Don't watch that movie. But another holiday movie that may do the trick is Valentine. This is a quintessential early 2000s slasher movie that has all the elements needed for someone to become aroused: sexual innuendos, gratuitous sex, and jump scares. In summary, do horror movies cause us to become aroused? No, definitely not. But is there a correlation depending on multiple factors like personalities, sexual fantasies, and our intimate relationships? Absolutely. So next time you're with someone who you may want to get sexual with, maybe recommend a horror movie. Who knows what could happen? All right, that's all I have. Please comment down below and let me know what horror movies turn you on or off. As always, please like and subscribe. This helps with the algorithm, and it helps me continue to get my message out there of sex positivity and promoting the importance of sex education. Until next time.